I lost my son that day, but I got my life back. The call came on a Tuesday morning. I remember because Tuesdays were always our day. For 15 years, every Tuesday at 9 in the morning, my son Daniel would call me, not because he needed anything, just to talk. Just to say, "Mom, how are you?" Those calls were the heartbeat of my week, the rhythm that kept me going after his father died. But that Tuesday, the phone rang at 7:30, 2 hours early. My hands trembled as I picked up. "Mom," Daniel's voice was tight, controlled. "I need you to come to the hospital, right now." My heart stopped. Is it Emma? Is it the baby? Daniel had married Emma 3 years earlier. She was 5 months pregnant with their first child. My first grandchild. "Just come, Mom." St. Mary's Hospital. 4th floor. He hung up before I could ask anything else. I threw on clothes without thinking, grabbed my purse, and drove 15 miles through morning traffic with my heart hammering against my ribs. Every red light felt like an eternity. Every slow driver felt like a personal attack. My mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Emma had been having complications. High blood pressure. Protein in her urine. The doctors had been monitoring her closely, but she had seemed fine at Sunday dinner just 2 days ago. She had laughed at Daniel's jokes. She had helped me clear the table. She had hugged me goodbye and said, "See you soon, Mom." I parked badly, half on the curb, and ran into the hospital. The elevator took forever. When the doors finally opened on the 4th floor, I saw Daniel immediately. He was standing in the hallway, still wearing yesterday's clothes, his hair disheveled, his eyes red. I ran to him. "Daniel, what happened? Where's Emma?" He looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. Hollow, empty. "She's gone, Mom. They're both gone." The words didn't make sense. I heard them, but my brain rejected them. "Gone where? What do you mean, gone?" "Emma had a stroke. A massive stroke. They tried everything, but there was too much damage." "The baby," he paused, his voice breaking. "The baby's heart stopped 20 minutes after Emma's." I don't remember falling. I don't remember Daniel catching me. I don't remember the nurse bringing me water. The next clear memory I have is sitting in a plastic chair in a waiting room, holding Daniel's hand, both of us crying silently. Emma was 28 years old. The baby, a boy they had already named Michael, was 22 weeks along, almost viable, almost a person who could have survived outside the womb. Almost my grandson. The funeral was 4 days later. I barely remember it. I remember Emma's parents, destroyed. I remember Emma's sister reading a poem. I remember Daniel standing at the casket, his hand on the wood, whispering something I couldn't hear. What I remember most clearly is what happened after. For 2 weeks, Daniel stayed with me. He couldn't bear to go back to the house he had shared with Emma. Every room there held memories, the nursery they had been painting, the crib they had assembled together, the tiny clothes Emma had been collecting, folded carefully in drawers. I took care of him the way I had when he was a child. I made him eat even when he said he wasn't hungry. I sat with him when he couldn't sleep. I held him when he cried. He was 32 years old, but in those moments, he was my little boy again, and I was the only person who could help him. On the 15th day, he went home. He said he needed to start facing his life again. I understood. I didn't want him to go, but I understood. That was when everything changed. At first, the signs were small. He stopped calling on Tuesdays. When I called him, he answered, but his responses were brief. "Yeah, Mom. I'm okay. I'll call you later." He never did. I told myself he was grieving. I told myself he needed space. I told myself that pushing him would only make things worse, so I waited. I gave him room. I respected his silence. 3 weeks became a month. A month became 6 weeks. I called less frequently, not wanting to be a burden. When I did call, sometimes he didn't answer at all. Then Emma's mother, Patricia, called me. "Diane," she said. Her voice was strange, careful. "Have you talked to Daniel lately?" "Not really," I admitted. "He's been distant. I think he's still processing everything." There was a long pause. "Diane, I need to tell you something. Daniel has been seeing someone." My first reaction was relief. Good. He needs friends. He needs support. "No," Patricia said. "Seeing someone. Romantically. He's been dating a woman named Ashley for the last month." The room tilted. A month? Emma had been gone for less than 8 weeks. Patricia continued. "Emma's sister saw them together at a restaurant last weekend. They were holding hands. Daniel introduced her as his girlfriend." I couldn't speak. My throat had closed completely. "Diane," Patricia's voice cracked. "I don't understand how he could move on so fast, how he could just replace our daughter like she never mattered." After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen for 2 hours staring at nothing. I told myself Patricia must be wrong, or maybe she was exaggerating, or maybe this Ashley was just a friend and Emma's sister had misunderstood. But deep down, I knew it was true. It explained everything. The distance, the silence, the way he had pulled away from everyone who knew Emma. I decided to wait. I decided not to confront him. I decided to let him come to me when he was ready. He never did. Another month passed, 2 months, 3. Daniel stopped answering my calls entirely. My texts went unread. I drove to his house twice. The first time, his car was in the driveway, but he didn't answer the door. The second time, a woman I didn't recognize answered. She was young, mid-20s, with long dark hair and a suspicious expression. "Can I help you?" "I'm Daniel's mother. Is he home?" She looked me up and down. "He's busy. I'll tell him you stopped by." She closed the door in my face. I stood on the porch of my son's house, the house I had helped him and Emma buy, the house where I had celebrated birthdays and holidays and ordinary Sunday dinners, and I realized I had become a stranger. That night, I did something I had never done before. I looked up this Ashley on social media. It took me 20 minutes to find her because I'm not good with computers, but eventually I saw her profile. There were photos of her and Daniel, recent photos, smiling, laughing, living a life that looked happy and uncomplicated. In one photo, they were at a beach. Daniel's arm was around her shoulders. The caption read, "Best weekend ever with my love." The photo was dated 6 weeks after Emma died. I closed the laptop and cried until I couldn't breathe. The next morning, I made a decision. I would try one more time. I would call Daniel and tell him I loved him and that I wasn't judging him and that I just wanted to be part of his life. I dialed his number. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. I started to leave a message. "Daniel, sweetheart, it's Mom. I know things have been hard, and I know you need space, but I miss you so much. I just want to talk to you. I just want to know you're okay. Please call me back. I love you." He never called back. A week later, I received a text message, not from Daniel, from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Ashley. Daniel asked me to reach out to you. He thinks it would be better if you stopped trying to contact him. He needs to move forward with his life, and having reminders of his past is making that difficult. Please respect his wishes." I read the message 10 times, then 20. Then I stopped counting. Daniel hadn't even had the courage to tell me himself. He had sent his new girlfriend to cut me out of his life. I tried to call him immediately. The call went straight to voicemail. He had blocked my number. I sat on my couch holding my phone and realized that my son, the person I had loved more than anything in the world, the person I had raised alone after his father died, the person I had comforted through every nightmare and disappointment and heartbreak, had erased me from his life. I had lost Emma and Michael, and now I had lost Daniel too. But unlike Emma and Michael, Daniel was still alive. He had made a choice. He had chosen to walk away. He had chosen to pretend I didn't exist. That was the day I lost my son. For 3 weeks, I barely functioned. I went to work at the elementary school where I had been a teacher's aide for 12 years, but I moved through the days like a ghost. The other teachers noticed. My supervisor, Margaret, pulled me aside. "Diane, what's going on? You're not yourself." I told her everything, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't hold it in anymore. When I finished, Margaret hugged me. "I'm so sorry," she said. "But Diane, I need to say something, and you might not want to hear it." "What?" "Your son is being cruel. What he's doing to you is wrong, and you need to stop waiting for him to come back." "But he's grieving," I protested. "He's not thinking clearly." Margaret shook her head. "Grief doesn't give you permission to hurt the people who love you. And blocking your own mother? Having his girlfriend tell you to stop contacting him? That's not grief. That's deliberate cruelty." Her words stung because they were true. That evening, I looked at myself in the mirror. I had lost 15 pounds. I had dark circles under my eyes. I looked 10 years older than I had 3 months ago. I realized I had been putting my life on hold, waiting for Daniel to come back. I had stopped seeing my friends because I didn't want to explain what was happening. I had stopped doing the things I enjoyed because nothing felt enjoyable anymore. I had been living in a state of suspended animation, hoping that if I just waited long enough, my son would remember he had a mother who loved him. But Margaret was right. I couldn't keep doing this. So I made a decision. If Daniel didn't want me in his life, I would build a life without him. It was the hardest decision I had ever made, harder even than burying my husband, because at least when Robert died, I knew he hadn't chosen to leave me. I started small. I called my friend Janet, whom I hadn't seen in months, and asked if she wanted to have lunch. She said yes immediately. Over sandwiches, I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she squeezed my hand. "Diane, you are one of the strongest people I know. You raised Daniel alone. You supported him through everything, and now he's treating you like garbage. You deserve better." "Do you think I did something wrong?" I asked. "Did I push too hard? Was I too present?" Janet shook her head firmly. "You were a good mother. You are a good mother. What Daniel is doing has nothing to do with you and everything to do with him." Her words were a lifeline. Over the next month, I slowly rebuilt my life. I started going to a yoga class on Tuesday mornings, the time slot that used to be reserved for Daniel's calls. I joined a book club. I volunteered at the animal shelter on weekends. I painted my bedroom a color I had always wanted but Robert had hated. I was learning to live for myself again. But there were still hard moments, terrible moments. I would see a father and son in the grocery store, laughing together, and I would have to leave my cart and walk out. I would hear a certain song on the radio, one Daniel used to love, and I would have to pull over because I was crying too hard to drive. Mother's Day was the worst. I spent it alone, trying not to think about all the Mother's Days when Daniel had made me breakfast in bed, or taken me out to dinner, or simply called to say, "I love you, Mom." This year, there was nothing. Not a call, not a text, not a card, nothing. I cried that entire day. But the next morning, I got up, went to work, and kept living. 6 months after Daniel cut me out of his life, I was having coffee with Janet when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was local. Hello? Mrs. Morrison, this is Detective Sarah Chen with the local police department. Do you have a moment to talk? My heart dropped into my stomach. Yes. What's wrong? I'm calling about your son, Daniel Morrison. He was involved in a car accident last night. Is he okay? Is he alive? He's alive. He's in the hospital with some injuries, but he's stable. However, we found your contact information in his emergency documents as his next of kin, and we thought you should know. What hospital? St. Mary's. Same hospital where Emma had died. I hung up and grabbed my purse. Janet insisted on driving me. During the 15-minute drive, my mind spun. He had kept me as his emergency contact. Even after everything, even after blocking my number and having Ashley tell me to leave him alone, he had kept me as the person to call if something went wrong. Maybe that meant something. Maybe it meant he still loved me, somewhere deep down. Maybe this accident would be the thing that brought us back together. We arrived at the hospital, and I went straight to the information desk. Daniel Morrison. He was brought in last night. Car accident. The woman checked her computer. 4th floor, room 412. I took the elevator up, my heart pounding. Janet came with me, silent support. When I reached room 412, the door was partially open. I could hear voices inside. I knocked softly and pushed the door open. Daniel was in the bed, his left arm in a cast, bruises on his face. But he was awake and alert, and sitting next to his bed, holding his good hand, was Ashley. They both looked up when I walked in. Daniel's expression shifted immediately from neutral to shocked to angry. "What are you doing here?" The question hit me like a slap. "The police called me. You're listed as my emergency contact. I came as soon as I heard." Ashley stood up, positioning herself between me and Daniel like a guard dog. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Daniel doesn't want you here." I looked past her to my son. "Daniel, please, I was so worried. I just want to make sure you're okay." "I'm fine," he said flatly. "You can go." Tears filled my eyes. "Daniel, I'm your mother. Please don't do this. You need to leave," Ashley said firmly. "You're upsetting him." I looked at Daniel one more time, hoping to see some crack in his armor, some sign that he still cared, but his expression was cold, closed off. "Fine," I whispered. "I'm sorry for bothering you." I walked out of that hospital room with whatever small hope I had been clinging to completely shattered. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall and sobbed. Janet held me while I fell apart. When I finally calmed down enough to speak, I said, "He really doesn't want me in his life." "Then you need to accept that," Janet said gently. "Not because he deserves it, but because you do. You deserve to stop torturing yourself over someone who has made it crystal clear that he doesn't want a relationship with you." She was right. I knew she was right. But knowing it and accepting it were two different things. That night, I wrote Daniel a letter. I didn't plan to send it. I just needed to get the words out. "Dear Daniel, I don't understand what I did to make you hate me so much. I have replayed every conversation, every interaction, every moment from the last year, trying to figure out where I went wrong. Was I too pushy? Did I say something that hurt you? Did I fail you in some way I don't even realize? I want you to know that I don't blame you for moving on after Emma died. I don't blame you for finding someone new. Everyone grieves differently, and I would never judge you for seeking comfort and companionship. That's not why I'm hurt. I'm hurt because you cut me out of your life completely. I'm hurt because you blocked my number without giving me a chance to understand why. I'm hurt because when I was terrified that you might be seriously injured, you looked at me like I was a stranger you wanted gone. I loved you before you were born. I loved you through every scraped knee and bad grade and teenage rebellion. I loved you through your father's death and your own grief and every hard moment of your life. And I still love you now, even though you clearly don't love me back. I'm writing this letter not because I expect anything from you, but because I need to say goodbye. I can't keep waiting for you to come back. I can't keep hoping that one day you'll remember you have a mother who would do anything for you. I have to let you go. If you ever change your mind, if you ever want to talk, I'll be here. But I'm not going to chase you anymore. I'm not going to beg for scraps of your attention. I deserve better than that. I hope you're happy, Daniel. I genuinely hope that Ashley makes you happy and that you build a good life together. I hope you heal from Emma's death and find peace. I hope you have children someday and that you're a wonderful father. And I hope that if you ever have a son, he never treats you the way you've treated me. Because I wouldn't wish this pain on anyone, not even you. I love you. I will always love you. But I have to love myself too. Goodbye. Mom. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. I never sent it, but writing it helped me process what I needed to do next. I needed to truly let go. The next day, I started therapy. I had resisted it before because it felt like admitting defeat, like admitting I couldn't handle my own problems, but I was drowning and I needed help. My therapist, Dr. Reynolds, was a calm, thoughtful woman in her 50s. In our first session, she asked me to tell her what brought me in. I told her everything. Emma's death, Daniel's withdrawal, the blocking, the hospital, all of it. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said something I didn't expect. Diane, what you're describing sounds like ambiguous loss. What's that? It's a type of grief that occurs when someone is physically absent but psychologically present, or physically present but psychologically absent. Your son is alive, but he's gone from your life. You can't fully grieve him because he's not dead, but you also can't maintain a relationship with him because he won't allow it. It's one of the most painful types of loss because there's no closure. That's exactly what it feels like, I said. I don't know how to mourn someone who's still alive. Over the next few months, therapy helped me understand several important things. First, Daniel's behavior was not my fault. I had been a good mother. I had done my best. Whatever was driving Daniel's actions, whether it was guilt over Emma's death, something Ashley was influencing, or his own unresolved issues, it had nothing to do with me failing him. Second, I couldn't fix this. I couldn't love Daniel back into my life. I couldn't persuade him or reason with him or wait him out. The only person who could change this situation was Daniel, and he had made it clear he had no intention of doing so. Third, I had to grieve not just the loss of my relationship with Daniel, but the loss of the future I had imagined. I had dreamed of being a grandmother to Michael. I had dreamed of Sunday dinners with Daniel and Emma and their children. I had dreamed of growing old surrounded by family. All of those dreams were gone, and I needed to mourn them. And finally, I had to build a new life that didn't revolve around waiting for my son to come back. That was the hardest part. Accepting that he might never come back. Accepting that I might die without ever speaking to him again. Accepting that he might go on to have children, my grandchildren, and I would never meet them. But Dr. Reynolds helped me see That acceptance didn't mean I was okay with what happened. It just meant I was choosing to stop fighting reality and start building something new. So I did. I threw myself into my work at the school. I started mentoring a young teacher who was struggling with classroom management. I volunteered to run the after-school reading program. The children gave me purpose. Every smile, every breakthrough, every moment when a struggling student finally understood a concept, it filled a space inside me that Daniel had left empty. I deepened my friendships. Janet and I started taking weekend trips together. We went to the mountains. We visited art galleries. We tried new restaurants. I reconnected with old friends I had lost touch with over the years because I had been so focused on being available for Daniel. I made new friends in my yoga class and book club. I explored hobbies I had always wanted to try. I took a pottery class and discovered I had a talent for it. My hands, which had spent so many years cooking meals and folding laundry and fixing, scraped knees found a new purpose in shaping clay. I started hiking on weekends, something I had never done before because Robert hadn't liked it, and Daniel had always been too busy. I even started dating. Nothing serious, just coffee or dinner with men I met through friends or dating apps. It felt strange at first, disloyal somehow, even though Robert had been gone for 12 years, but it also felt good to have someone show interest in me, to feel like I was more than just a discarded mother. One man, Thomas, a retired engineer with kind eyes and a dry sense of humor, took me to a concert. I hadn't been to live music in years. As we sat there listening to the symphony, I realized I was genuinely enjoying myself. I wasn't thinking about Daniel. I wasn't wondering what he was doing or if he ever thought about me. I was just present in that moment, alive and grateful. A year after Daniel cut me out of his life, I realized something remarkable. I was happy. Not all the time. There were still moments when the pain of losing my son hit me like a wave. I would see a mother and son in a store, laughing together, and the grief would be so sharp I could barely breathe. But overall, moment to moment, day to day, I was genuinely, authentically happy. I had friends who cared about me. I had work that fulfilled me. I had hobbies that brought me joy. I had a life that was mine, not dependent on anyone else's approval or presence. I had lost my son, but I had found myself. One Tuesday morning, exactly a year after the hospital incident, I was in my pottery class when my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it. Tuesday mornings were sacred now, my time to create and think and be present. But something made me check. It was a message from an unknown number. Mom, this is Daniel. I know I don't have the right to contact you, but I need to talk to you. Please. My hands started shaking. The clay I had been working on collapsed. My instructor, a gentle woman named Marie, came over. Are you okay, Diane? I showed her the message. She knew my story. Everyone in the class knew my story. I had been open about my grief, and they had supported me through it. What do you want to do? Marie asked. I don't know. You don't have to respond right now. You don't have to respond at all if you don't want to. She was right. I had built a good life, a peaceful life. Did I want to risk that peace by letting Daniel back in? I put my phone away and finished my class. I needed time to think. That evening, I called Dr. Reynolds. Even though I had stopped regular therapy sessions 6 months earlier, she had told me I could always reach out if I needed to. Diane, she said, after I explained the situation, what do you want? I don't know. Part of me wants to hear what he has to say, but another part of me is terrified of getting hurt again. That's completely understandable. Can I ask you something? Of course. If you respond to Daniel and he hurts you again, do you trust yourself to survive it? I thought about that question for a long time. A year ago, the answer would have been no. A year ago, I was barely surviving. But now, yes, I said finally. I do. Then maybe you have your answer. After I hung up with Dr. Reynolds, I stared at Daniel's message for a long time. Finally, I typed a response. Daniel, I need time to think about whether I'm ready to talk to you. I'll let you know. His response came within seconds. I understand, Mom. Take all the time you need. I'm just grateful you responded. I sat with that decision for 3 days. I talked to Janet. I talked to my pottery instructor. I even talked to some of the kids at school, asking them about forgiveness and second chances without telling them the full story. Finally, on the 4th day, I texted Daniel back. We can meet for coffee on Saturday afternoon. There's a place called The Daily Grind on Main Street. Thank you, Mom. I'll be there. Saturday came too quickly. I changed my outfit 3 times. I arrived 15 minutes early and sat in my car, trying to calm my racing heart. Through the window of the coffee shop, I saw Daniel arrive. He looked different, thinner, older. There were lines on his face that hadn't been there a year ago. He saw me through the window and gave a small, uncertain wave. I took a deep breath and walked inside. We ordered coffee in awkward silence and sat at a corner table. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. Mom, I'm so sorry. The words hung in the air between us. Sorry for what specifically? I asked. I wasn't trying to be difficult. I genuinely needed to know if he understood what he had done. For everything. For cutting you out. For blocking you. For having Ashley tell you to leave me alone. For how I treated you at the hospital. For making you feel like you didn't matter. Tears filled my eyes, but I blinked them back. Why, Daniel? Why did you do it? He took a shaky breath. After Emma died, I was drowning. Every single thing reminded me of her. The house, the nursery, the baby clothes. And you, Mom, every time I saw you or talked to you, all I could think about was Emma and Michael and how my entire life had fallen apart. But I loved you through that pain, I said quietly. I wanted to help you. I know. But I wasn't capable of accepting help. Ashley. She made everything seem easier. She didn't know Emma. She didn't ask questions. Being with her felt like I could pretend my old life had never existed, and that meant pretending you didn't exist either. That doesn't make what you did okay. I know. It doesn't. Nothing makes it okay. I was cruel to you, and I've spent the last year realizing just how cruel. What changed? I asked. Why now? Ashley and I broke up 4 months ago. After she left, I had nothing to distract me anymore. All the grief I had been running from caught up with me. I started therapy. Real therapy. And my therapist helped me see that I had been making you pay for Emma's death. Like somehow, if I pushed you away, it would hurt less. But it didn't. It just meant I lost everyone. The tears I had been holding back started to fall. Do you have any idea how much you hurt me? Yes, he said, his own eyes filling. I do now. I think about it every day. I think about how you must have felt when I blocked you, when Ashley sent that text, when I told you to leave the hospital. I think about all the Tuesdays when you must have waited for my call. I think about Mother's Day when I sent you nothing. It destroys me, Mom. We sat in silence for a while, both of us crying quietly in a corner of a coffee shop while other people lived their normal, uncomplicated lives around us. Daniel, I said finally, I love you. I have never stopped loving you. But I can't go back to the way things were. I don't want to go back either, he said. I want to build something new, something healthier. What does that look like? I don't know exactly. but I know I want to be a better son. I want to actually be there for you, not just take from you. I want a real relationship. I wiped my eyes. I need you to understand something. The last year was the hardest year of my life, but it also taught me that I can survive without you. I love you, but I don't need you to be happy anymore. And that's not going to change. I understand, Mom, and honestly, that makes me respect you even more. We talked for 2 more hours. He told me about his therapy sessions. He told me he had finally visited Emma's grave. He told me he had reached out to Emma's family and apologized for disappearing. He told me he had quit the job that had been stressing him out and found something better. I told him about my pottery class, about my weekend hikes, about the book club and the volunteer work, and the life I had built without him. As we were getting ready to leave, Daniel asked, "Can we try again, Mom?" Slowly. I looked at my son, this man I had raised, this person who had broken my heart into 1,000,000 pieces and was now asking for a chance to put it back together. "Yes," I said, "but we do this on my terms. No more canceled plans, no more ghosting. If you need space, you tell me. If you're struggling, you tell me. We communicate like adults. I promise. And Daniel, if you ever treat me like that again, I'm done. I mean it. I love you, but I won't let you destroy me twice." "I understand. I won't. I promise I won't." We started over slowly. A phone call once a week, just checking in, nothing heavy. Then coffee every other week. Then, after 2 months, Sunday dinners once a month at my house. It was awkward at first. We had to learn how to talk to each other again. We had to rebuild trust that had been completely shattered. There were moments when old patterns tried to reassert themselves, when Daniel would cancel plans or not call when he said he would, and I had to remind him firmly that this behavior wasn't acceptable. But gradually, over months, we found our rhythm. Daniel stayed in therapy. He started talking about Emma openly, sharing memories without drowning in guilt. He even showed me photos of her that he had been unable to look at for over a year, and I maintained my own life. I didn't cancel pottery class for Daniel. I didn't rearrange my schedule to accommodate him. I kept my friendships and my hobbies and my independence. Our relationship was one part of my life, not the center of it. 6 months into our reconciliation, Daniel called me on a Tuesday morning at 9, just like he used to years ago. "Hey, Mom, just calling to see how you are." I smiled. "I'm good, honey, really good. How are you?" "I'm okay. I'm good too." We talked for 20 minutes, just normal conversation. "How was your week? What are you working on? Did you see that movie?" It was ordinary and unremarkable and absolutely precious because of that. About 8 months into rebuilding our relationship, Daniel told me he had been seeing someone new. "Mom, there's someone I'd like you to meet, if you're ready." I was nervous. The last time he had dated someone seriously, she had been part of him pushing me away, but I could also hear something different in his voice. Confidence. Happiness that wasn't based on running away from pain. "I'd like to meet her. Her name was Rachel." She was a nurse at the hospital where Emma had died. They had met in a grief support group for people who had lost spouses or partners. When Daniel brought her to Sunday dinner, I understood immediately why he had fallen for her. Rachel was warm and genuine. She asked me real questions about my life and listened to the answers. She told me about her work, about her passion for helping people through their hardest moments, and most importantly, when Daniel got up to help me in the kitchen, Rachel leaned forward and said something that made me trust her completely. "Mrs. Morrison, Daniel has told me everything about what happened between you two. I want you to know that I've made it very clear to him that family is important to me. What he did to you was wrong, and I won't be part of any relationship where parents are treated that way." I liked her immediately. Over dinner, I watched Daniel and Rachel together. They were easy with each other, but it was different from what I had seen with Ashley. There was depth there, understanding. They had both survived loss, and that shared experience had created a foundation of real intimacy. After they left, I called Janet. He brought his new girlfriend to dinner. How was it? Janet: I think this might actually work out. She seems wonderful. I'm so happy for you, Diane. You deserve this. But here's the thing, I said. Even if it doesn't work out, even if Daniel and Rachel break up, even if he struggles again, I'll be okay. Because I know now that my happiness isn't dependent on him. That's huge, Diane. That's everything. 18 months after Daniel first contacted me, he proposed to Rachel. He asked me to help him plan the proposal. He wanted it to be special, meaningful, something that honored both his love for Rachel and his relationship with me. We planned it together over several weeks. He would propose at the botanical gardens where Rachel loved to walk. I would be hiding with a photographer to capture the moment. After she said yes, I would come out and celebrate with them. When the day came, I watched from behind a rose garden as Daniel got down on one knee. Rachel's hands flew to her face. She said yes, and they kissed, and I cried tears that were pure joy, no pain mixed in. I came out from my hiding spot, and Rachel ran to hug me. Mrs. Morrison, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're part of this. The wedding was 6 months later. It was small and intimate, just close friends and family. I sat in the front row, wearing a dress Rachel and I had picked out together. When Daniel said his vows, he looked at Rachel with such love and gratitude that I knew, absolutely knew, he had healed. At the reception, Daniel asked me to dance. Thank you, Mom, he said as we moved to the music. Thank you for giving me a second chance. Thank you for being strong enough to build your own life, because I think that's what made it possible for me to come back. I had to know you would be okay without me before I could be part of your life in a healthy way. I pulled back to look at him. Daniel, I want you to know something. I'm grateful we reconciled. Having you in my life again is a gift. But even if we hadn't, even if you had never come back, I would have been okay. I found out I'm strong enough to survive without you. And that knowledge, as painful as it was to gain, is precious to me. He hugged me tightly. I know, Mom. I'm sorry you had to learn that the way you did, but I'm grateful you did, because now we both know this relationship is a choice, not a need. 2 years after our reconciliation, Rachel gave birth to a baby girl. They called me from the hospital. Mom, Daniel's voice was filled with emotion. Rachel just had the baby. Can you come? I'll be there in 20 minutes. When I arrived at the hospital and walked into that room, when I saw my son holding his daughter with tears streaming down his face, I understood that this was closure, not for Emma's death. That loss would always be part of Daniel's story, but closure for the pain between us. Daniel looked up and saw me. Mom, meet Emma. We named her after her. He placed the baby in my arms and I held my granddaughter for the first time. She was perfect, tiny and pink and absolutely perfect. As I looked down at this new life, this second chance, I thought about everything it had taken to get here. The death of Emma and Michael, the loss of my relationship with Daniel, the year of rebuilding myself from nothing, the slow, painful process of reconciliation. It had been the hardest journey of my life, but it had also been the most important, because I had learned that my worth wasn't determined by whether my son loved me. I had learned that I could survive the loss of the person I thought I couldn't live without. I had learned that I was enough, all by myself, and that knowledge had set me free. When Daniel came back, it wasn't as the center of my life. It was as an addition to a life that was already full and rich and meaningful. That's what I want anyone hearing this story to understand. If someone cuts you out of their life, even someone you love desperately, it doesn't mean your life is over. It means you have an opportunity, a terrible, painful opportunity, to discover who you are when you're not defined by that relationship. You might find, as I did, that you're stronger than you ever imagined. You might find that you have interests and talents and relationships you never explored because you were so focused on that one person. You might find that the life you build from the ashes of rejection is better than the life you had before. And if that person comes back, wonderful. But if they don't, you'll still be okay. More than okay. You'll be whole. Because true strength isn't never falling apart. True strength is falling apart completely and then rebuilding yourself into someone even better than you were before. I lost my son that day when he'd blocked my number, when his girlfriend told me to stay away, when he looked at me in that hospital room like I was nothing to him. But I got my life back, my real life, the life where I matter, not just as someone's mother, but as a complete person in my own right. The life where I have purpose and passion and people who genuinely care about me. The life where I know my own value and don't need anyone else to validate it. And when Daniel came back into my life, he came back to a woman who was complete without him. That's what made our reconciliation possible. That's what made it healthy. I'm 63 years old now. Baby Emma is starting to crawl. Daniel and Rachel are talking about having another child. My pottery is being featured in a local gallery. I'm planning a trip to Italy with Janet. I'm mentoring 3 teachers at school. My life is full. Some people might hear this story and focus on the happy ending, on the fact that Daniel and I reconciled. But that's not the point. The point is that I survived the period when we didn't reconcile. I survived the darkest time of my life and came out the other side, not just intact, but thriving. That's the real story, not the reconciliation, the survival, the rebuilding, the discovery that I was strong enough to be okay without him. But let me tell you about something that happened during those dark months that I haven't mentioned yet. Something that changed everything. It was about 4 months after Daniel had cut me out completely. I was at the grocery store doing my weekly shopping when I saw them, Daniel and Ashley. They were in the produce section laughing about something. Ashley was holding a cantaloupe, making a joke I couldn't hear. Daniel was smiling in a way I hadn't seen him smile since before Emma died. I froze. My cart was full of groceries. I was standing in the middle of the aisle, and they were 20 feet away, completely oblivious to my presence. I could have turned around. I could have abandoned my cart and walked out. But something in me refused to run. This was my grocery store. I had been shopping here for 15 years. I had every right to be here, so I continued shopping. I moved through the aisles, selecting items, checking my list, acting as if I hadn't seen them. But I was hyper-aware of where they were. I could hear Ashley's laugh. I could hear Daniel's voice. And then we turned a corner at the same time, and we were face to face. The look on Daniel's face was something I'll never forget. Shock, then guilt, then something that looked almost like fear. "Mom," he said. His voice was barely a whisper. "Hello, Daniel." My voice was surprisingly steady. Ashley looked between us, her expression hardening. She knew who I was. Of course she knew. "We should go," she said to Daniel, touching his arm possessively. But Daniel didn't move. He just stood there, looking at me, and for a moment I saw my son again. The real Daniel. The one who used to call me every Tuesday. The one who used to hug me goodbye and say, "I love you, Mom." "How have you been?" he asked. The question was so absurd, so inadequate that I almost laughed. How had I been? I had been destroyed. I had been rebuilt. I had been through hell and come out the other side. "I've been surviving," I said. "That's all I could manage." Ashley tugged on Daniel's arm more insistently. "Daniel, we really need to go." He let her pull him away. But as he walked past me, he looked back once. Just once. And in that look, I saw something that gave me a tiny spark of hope, regret, maybe even longing. But then they were gone, and I was standing alone in the grocery store, shaking. I abandoned my card after all. I walked out to my car and sat there for 20 minutes crying, not because seeing Daniel had broken me, but because it had shown me something important. He wasn't happy, not really. That laugh I had heard, that smile I had seen, they were surface level. Underneath, he was still the same broken man who had lost his wife and child. He had just found a new way to hide from the pain. And me? I was actually healing. Despite everything, despite the rejection and the pain, I was moving forward in a real way. I wasn't running. I wasn't hiding. I was facing my grief head on and building something new from it. That realization was powerful. It meant that even if Daniel never came back, even if he spent the rest of his life running from his pain, I would be okay. Better than okay. I would be whole. I drove home and called Dr. Reynolds. I told her about the encounter. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Sad," I said, "but also strong." Does that make sense? Perfect sense. You saw him and you didn't fall apart. That's progress, Diane. After that encounter, something shifted in me. I stopped wondering what Daniel was doing. I stopped checking his social media. I stopped hoping that maybe today would be the day he reached out. I let him go, truly let him go. And that's when my life really began to bloom. I threw myself into my pottery with a passion I had never felt before. I started taking advanced classes. I learned techniques I had never attempted. I created pieces that were beautiful and complex and entirely my own. My instructor, Marie, noticed the change. "Diane, whatever you're going through, it's showing up in your work. This piece you made last week, it's extraordinary." She was holding a vase I had created. It was asymmetrical, deliberately imperfect, with a glaze that looked like storm clouds. I had titled it "Breaking Open." "It's about transformation," I told her, about how sometimes things have to break before they can become something beautiful. Marie smiled. "I think you should submit this to the regional art show." I did, and it won second place. When they called to tell me, I cried. Not because of the award, although that was wonderful, but because I had created something meaningful, something that was entirely mine, something that had nothing to do with being anyone's mother. The award ceremony was on a Thursday evening. Janet came with me, along with several friends from my yoga class. We dressed up. We drank wine. We celebrated not just my art, but the fact that I had built this life, this community, this version of myself that existed independent of Daniel. As I stood there with my award, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me, I realized something profound. I had spent so much of my life defining myself through my relationships. I was Robert's wife. I was Daniel's mother. But who was Diane? Now I knew. Diane was an artist, a friend, a mentor, a strong woman who had survived the unthinkable and created something beautiful from the wreckage. That night, I posted a photo of myself with my award on social media. It was the first time I had posted anything in months. The response was overwhelming. Friends I hadn't talked to in years reached out to congratulate me. Some of them shared their own stories of loss and recovery. and Daniel saw it. I knew because Emma's sister, who was still friends with me on social media, messaged me later. "Diane, I saw your award." "Congratulations. That's amazing. Emma would be so proud of you. She always loved your creativity." "Thank you," I wrote back. "How is your family doing?" "We're managing. It's still hard." She paused. Then she wrote something unexpected. "I saw Daniel the other day. He looked at your post for a long time. I think he misses you." "If he does, he knows how to reach me," I replied. "But I'm not waiting for him anymore. Good for you. You deserve better than how he's treated you." A few days after that conversation, something strange happened. I received a letter in the mail. Not an email or a text, but an actual handwritten letter. The return address was Daniel's. My hands shook as I opened it. "Dear Mom," it began. "I saw your award. I saw you looking so happy, surrounded by people who love you, and it broke something in me. Not in a bad way, in a necessary way. I've spent the last 4 months telling myself that cutting you out was the right thing to do, that I needed a clean break from my old life to move forward. But seeing you thriving without me made me realize something. I didn't cut you out to protect myself. I cut you out because I was ashamed. I was ashamed that I couldn't save Emma. I was ashamed that I moved on so quickly with Ashley. I was ashamed of how weak I felt. And every time I looked at you, I saw that shame reflected back at me. But the truth is, you never judged me. You never made me feel weak. I did that to myself. I'm writing this letter not because I expect you to respond or because I think one letter can fix what I broke. I'm writing because you deserve to know that what I did had nothing to do with you and everything to do with my own inability to face my pain. You were the best mother anyone could ask for. You supported me through everything, loved me unconditionally, and were there for me during the worst moment of my life. And I repaid that by treating you like you didn't matter. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I needed you to know that I'm sorry and that I'm working on becoming someone who would deserve it. I'm in therapy now. Real therapy. I ended things with Ashley because I realized I was using her to run away from my problems. I'm facing my grief for the first time since Emma died, and part of that grief is acknowledging that I lost more than Emma and Michael. I lost you too, and that was entirely my fault. If you never want to speak to me again, I understand, but if you ever decide you're willing to give me a chance to make amends, I'll be here, waiting, for as long as it takes. I love you, Mom. I never stopped, even when I was too broken to show it. Daniel. I read the letter 3 times, then I folded it carefully and put it in my drawer, next to the letter I had written to him months ago, but never sent. I didn't respond immediately. I needed time to process. I needed to talk to Dr. Reynolds. I needed to sit with this information and figure out what I wanted. Because here's the thing, the letter was beautiful. It was everything I had wanted to hear for months, but words are easy, actions are harder. I had built a good life without Daniel, a life I loved, and I had to decide if I was willing to risk that life by letting him back in. It took me 2 weeks to respond. When I finally did, I sent a short email. "Daniel, I received your letter. Thank you for your honesty. I'm not ready to see you yet, but I'm willing to start with occasional emails. If you're serious about making amends, you'll respect that boundary." His response came within an hour. "Thank you, Mom. I'll take whatever you're willing to give." We started emailing once a week. Short messages at first. "How was your week? What are you working on?" Nothing deep, just small connections. But over time, the emails got longer, more honest. Daniel told me about his therapy sessions, about the breakthrough he had when he finally let himself cry for Emma and Michael, about visiting their graves for the first time in over a year. I told him about my pottery, about my friends, about the life I had built. I was honest about how much he had hurt me. I didn't sugarcoat it or make it easier for him, and he listened. He didn't make excuses. He just acknowledged the pain he had caused and committed to doing better. After 2 months of emails, Daniel asked if we could talk on the phone. I agreed, but I was nervous. Email felt safe. A phone call felt riskier. The call was awkward at first. Neither of us knew quite what to say. But then Daniel asked me about my pottery, and I found myself telling him about a new piece I was working on. He listened attentively, asking questions, showing genuine interest. And then he told me something that caught me completely off guard. "Mom, I'm starting to remember things, good things, about us before everything fell apart. I remember how you used to make me hot chocolate with extra marshmallows when I was stressed about exams. I remember how you sat with me for hours when Dad died, even though you were grieving too. I remember all the times you were there for me, and I'm so sorry I forgot." Tears ran down my face. "You didn't forget, Daniel. You just couldn't see past your pain. Maybe. But I see it now. And I want you to know that even when I was pushing you away, even when I was being cruel, those memories were still there. I just couldn't let myself feel them. After that phone call, something changed between us. We started talking more frequently, once a week, then twice a week. The conversations got easier, more natural, but I maintained my boundaries. I didn't cancel plans with my friends to talk to Daniel. I didn't rearrange my life to accommodate him, and I was honest when I was angry or hurt or needed space. One day, about 5 months after his letter, Daniel called me with a question that took my breath away. "Mom, would you be willing to meet for coffee, just to see each other face to face?" I took a deep breath. "Yes, but Daniel, I need you to understand something. If you hurt me again, if you disappear again, I'm done. I can't go through this a third time." "I understand. And Mom, I won't. I promise I won't." We met at the Daily Grind on a Saturday afternoon. When I walked in and saw Daniel sitting at a corner table, my heart clenched. He looked so different from the last time I had seen him. Healthier, more present, like he had finally stopped running. The conversation we had that day was the most honest conversation we had ever had. Daniel told me everything about how he had felt when Emma died, about how he had used Ashley to escape, about the moment he realized he had destroyed the most important relationship in his life, and I told him my truth. About the nights I cried myself to sleep, about the way I had to rebuild myself from nothing, about the strength I had found in surviving without him. We both cried, but they were different tears than before. These were tears of genuine healing. At the end of our coffee, Daniel asked, "What happens now?" "Now," I said, "we start over. Slowly, carefully, building trust one day at a time." And that's exactly what we did. The reconciliation wasn't instant or magical. It was hard work. There were setbacks. There were moments when old patterns tried to reassert themselves. There were times when I had to remind Daniel firmly that his behavior was not acceptable. But he showed up, consistently. He called when he said he would call. He showed up when he said he would show up. He went to therapy every week and did the work to heal. And slowly, over months, we rebuilt what we had lost. But it was different this time. Better. More honest. More balanced. I didn't become the center of his life, and he didn't become the center of mine. We were two independent people choosing to have a relationship, not two people dependent on each other. When Daniel met Rachel, he brought her to meet me within the first month of their relationship. He told me he had learned from his mistake with Ashley. He didn't want to keep his new relationship separate from his family. He wanted integration, not isolation. Rachel was wonderful. From the first moment I met her, I could see that she was different from Ashley. She wasn't helping Daniel run away from his pain. She was helping him face it. Over dinner that first night, Rachel told me something that made me love her immediately. Mrs. Morrison, Daniel has told me everything about what happened between you two. I want you to know that I will never let him treat you that way again. Family is everything to me, and anyone who loves me needs to treat their family with respect. The wedding was beautiful, but what made it truly special was a moment that happened right before the ceremony. Daniel came to find me in the room where I was waiting. "Mom," he said, his eyes red, "I need to tell you something before I walk down that aisle." "What is it?" "When I was planning this wedding with Rachel, I kept thinking about my wedding with Emma, how I was so excited about marrying her, but also how I took for granted that you would be there, that you would always be there, and then I thought about how close I came to losing you forever." He took my hands. If I had never apologized, if I had never reached out, I would be getting married today without my mother, and that would have been my fault, mine, not yours, and it would have been the biggest regret of my life. I hugged him tight. "But you did reach out, and I'm here. We're here, I know. And I will never take that for granted again." When little Emma was born, I was in the delivery room. Rachel had asked me to be there, along with her own mother, when that baby was placed in my arms. When I looked down at her tiny, perfect face, I thought about how close I had come to missing this moment. If Daniel and I hadn't reconciled, I might never have known I had a granddaughter. I might have lived the rest of my life wondering what she looked like, what her personality was like, whether she had Daniel's eyes or Rachel's smile. But I didn't have to wonder. I was there. I got to be part of this miracle. And yet, even in that moment of pure joy, I knew something crucial. If Daniel had never come back, if I had never held this baby, I still would have been okay. I still would have had a life worth living. That knowledge, that certainty of my own strength and worth was the real gift that came from losing my son, not the reconciliation, as wonderful as that was. The gift was discovering that I was complete all on my own. Now, when I look at my life, I see something beautiful and complex and entirely mine. I see my pottery displayed in galleries and homes around the city. I see my friends, a chosen family who showed up for me when my biological family couldn't. I see my students at school whose lives I touch every single day. I see my granddaughter growing up knowing she has a grandmother who loves her fiercely, but I also see myself, not as someone's mother or someone's wife or someone's friend, just as Diane, a woman who survived the impossible and came out stronger. People sometimes ask me if I've forgiven Daniel. The answer is complicated. Yes, I've forgiven him for the specific actions he took. I understand now that he was drowning in grief and made terrible choices as a result. But I'll never forget what happened. I'll never forget the pain of being cut out of my son's life. I'll never forget the work it took to rebuild myself. And I'll never put myself in a position where someone can hurt me that way again. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending the hurt never happened. It means acknowledging the hurt, learning from it, and choosing to move forward without carrying the weight of bitterness. I forgave Daniel not for his sake, but for mine, because carrying that anger was exhausting, and I had better things to do with my energy. Last Tuesday, exactly 5 years after Emma died, Daniel called me at 9 a.m, just like he used to, just like he does every Tuesday now. "Hey, Mom, how are you?" "I'm good, honey. Really good. I'm working on a new pottery piece for the spring show. That's awesome. Can I come see it sometime? Of course. Come over for Sunday dinner and I'll show you. After we hung up, I sat for a moment thinking about everything that had led to this simple, ordinary phone call. The loss, the pain, the rebuilding, the reconciliation. If you had told me 5 years ago when I was sitting in that hospital waiting room learning that Emma and Michael were gone, that I would be here now, happy and whole and surrounded by love, I wouldn't have believed you. If you had told me that Daniel would cut me out of his life completely, that I would have to rebuild myself from nothing, that I would discover strengths I never knew I had, I would have been terrified. But here I am, not just surviving, but thriving. Not just okay, but genuinely, deeply happy. The journey was hell. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. But the destination, this place where I know my own worth and strength, was worth every painful step. If you're going through something similar right now, if someone you love has rejected you or cut you out or treated you like you don't matter, please hear this. You will survive. You will more than survive. You will discover parts of yourself you never knew existed. The pain is real. The grief is valid. Don't let anyone tell you to get over it or move on faster than you're ready to. Take all the time you need. But also know this. On the other side of this pain is a version of you that is stronger, wiser, more complete than you ever imagined possible. A version of you that knows your worth doesn't depend on anyone else's approval or presence. That version of you is waiting, and she is magnificent. My name is Diane Morrison. I'm 63 years old. I lost my son that day when he blocked my number and cut me out of his life. But I got my life back, my real life, the one where I matter, not just as someone's mother, but as a complete person in my own right. And if I had to choose between the woman I was before and the woman I am now, I would choose this woman every single time. Because losing my son taught me something invaluable. It taught me that the only person I truly can't live without is myself. And once you know that, once you really understand that in your bones, you become unstoppable. That's the real ending to this story. Not that Daniel came back, although I'm grateful he did. The real ending is that I found myself. And that self is someone I'm proud to be. But before I close this story, I want to share one more thing. Something that happened just last month that brought everything full circle. I was at the elementary school where I work, helping a second grader named Marcus with his reading. Marcus had been struggling all year. The letters seemed to dance on the page for him, refusing to stay still long enough for him to make sense of them. His frustration was palpable. Every session he would try so hard, his little face scrunched up in concentration, only to fail again and again. I understood that frustration, the feeling of trying your absolute hardest and still not getting the results you want, the feeling of being stuck in a pattern you can't seem to break. "Marcus," I said gently, "can I tell you a secret?" He looked up at me, his eyes suspicious but curious. "What?" "Sometimes the hardest things in life teach us the most important lessons. You're struggling with reading right now, and I know that feels terrible. But this struggle is teaching you something valuable. It's teaching you that you're stronger than you think, that you can keep trying even when things are hard. That failure isn't the end of the story." He thought about that for a moment. "Did you ever have something really hard happen to you?" "Yes, something really, really hard." "What did you do?" "I kept going, even when I wanted to give up. Even when it hurt so much I could barely breathe, I kept going, and eventually I discovered that I was strong enough to handle it." Marcus looked at the book in front of him with new determination. "Okay, let's try again." We worked for another 30 minutes. And at the end of that session, Marcus successfully read an entire page without stopping. It wasn't perfect. He still stumbled over some words, but he did it. The look of pride on his face when he finished was something I'll never forget. I did it, Mrs. Morrison. I really did it. You did. And do you know why? Because I'm strong? Because you didn't give up, even when it was hard, even when you failed before. You kept trying. That's what real strength is. As Marcus left my classroom, waving goodbye with a huge smile on his face, I felt something click into place. This was why I had gone through everything with Daniel. Not just to learn my own strength, but to be able to pass that lesson on to others. If I hadn't experienced that pain, if I hadn't had to rebuild myself from nothing, I wouldn't have been able to help Marcus in that moment. I wouldn't have understood in my bones what it means to keep going when everything in you wants to quit. My pain had given me wisdom, and that wisdom was now helping others. That evening, I told Rachel about the incident with Marcus. She and Daniel had come over for dinner, bringing little Emma with them. The baby was 8 months old now, starting to pull herself up on furniture and babble in that almost language that babies use. Diane, Rachel said, using my first name as I had asked her to, "That's beautiful. You've turned your pain into purpose." I hadn't thought of it that way, but she was right. My pottery, my friendships, my work at the school, they were all expressions of what I had learned during those dark months. They were proof that pain doesn't have to be meaningless. It can be transformative if you let it. Daniel, who had been playing with Emma on the floor, looked up. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever regret forgiving me? Do you ever wish you had stayed angry?" The question hung in the air. I could see the vulnerability in his face, the fear that maybe I was just pretending everything was okay. "No," I said honestly. "I don't regret forgiving you. But Daniel, I want you to understand something. Forgiving you doesn't mean what you did was okay. It wasn't. It was cruel and it almost destroyed me." He nodded, his eyes filling with tears. "I know. But I forgave you because carrying that anger was poisoning me. Because I wanted to be free of the pain, not tied to it forever. And because I believe people can change. You've shown me through your actions that you have changed." I paused, making sure he was really hearing me. "But if you ever treat me that way again, the forgiveness ends. I mean that. I've learned to protect myself, and I won't sacrifice that protection for anyone, not even you." "I understand, Mom, and I won't. I've learned my lesson the hard way." Rachel reached over and squeezed my hand. "Diane, thank you for giving him a second chance. I know it couldn't have been easy. It wasn't. But some things are worth the risk." Later that night, after they had gone home, I sat in my living room with a cup of tea, thinking about everything that had brought me to this moment. 5 years ago, I had been sitting in a hospital waiting room learning that Emma and Michael were gone. 4 years ago, I had been sitting on my couch, reading a text message from Ashley telling me to leave Daniel alone. 3 years ago, I had been in therapy, learning what ambiguous loss meant and how to survive it. And now I was here, happy, whole, surrounded by love that was real and honest and hard-won. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Janet. "Movie night this Friday? I'm thinking that new comedy everyone's been talking about." "Absolutely," I replied. "My place or yours?" "Yours. I'll bring wine and popcorn." I smiled. This was my life now. Simple plans with good friends. No drama. No manipulation. No walking on eggshells or wondering if I had said the wrong thing. Just genuine connection with people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could give them. The next day at school, Margaret, my supervisor, pulled me aside. "Diane, I have something to tell you. The school board is creating a new position, Coordinator of Student Support Services. It would involve mentoring new teachers, developing curriculum for struggling students, and overseeing our tutoring programs. I think you'd be perfect for it." "Me? But I'm not a certified teacher. You don't need to be for this position. You need experience, compassion, and the ability to connect with both students and teachers. You have all of that in spades." I thought about it. 5 years ago, I never would have considered taking on more responsibility. I would have been too consumed with worry about Daniel, too focused on being available for his needs. But now? "I'd love to," I said. "When do I start?" That promotion changed my work life in the best possible way. Instead of working with one classroom, I was working with the entire school. I was training teachers in techniques for reaching struggling students. I was developing programs that actually made a difference. I was using everything I had learned from my own struggles to help others navigate theirs, and it was fulfilling in a way I never could have imagined. One afternoon, about 6 months into my new position, I received an email that stopped me in my tracks. It was from Patricia, Emma's mother. "Dear Diane, I hope this email finds you well. I wanted to reach out because I've been thinking about you lately. Emma's father and I have been in family therapy, trying to process our grief in healthier ways. Our therapist suggested we make amends with people we may have hurt or misunderstood during our grieving process. Your name came up. I want to apologize for how I handled things after Emma died. When I called you to tell you about Daniel dating Ashley, I was so focused on my own pain and anger that I didn't consider how you might be feeling. You had lost your daughter-in-law and your grandson too, and then you lost your son in a different way. I should have been there for you, but instead I added to your burden. I'm sorry. I also want you to know that Emma loved you very much. She used to tell me all the time how lucky Daniel was to have you as a mother. She said you were the kind of mother-in-law most people only dream of having. I think she would be sad to know what happened between you and Daniel, but I also think she would be proud of how you survived it. If you're ever willing to have coffee and talk, I would welcome the chance to reconnect. Not because I expect anything from you, but because I've realized that cutting people out doesn't make the pain go away. It just makes you more alone with it. With love and respect, Patricia. I read the email 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Patricia's apology meant more than I had realized it would. For so long, I had felt like Emma's death had caused me to lose not just Michael and Daniel, but Emma's entire family. They had pulled away, consumed by their own grief, and I had been left completely alone. But here was Patricia, reaching out, acknowledging my pain, offering connection. I responded immediately. Dear Patricia, thank you for your email. Your apology means more to me than you know. I would love to have coffee and talk. I've missed you and your family, and I want you to know that I don't hold any anger towards you. We were all drowning in grief, doing the best we could to survive. Let me know when you're free and we'll set something up. With love, Diane. We met the following week at a small cafe downtown. Patricia looked older, more fragile than I remembered. Grief had aged both of us, but there was also something softer in her expression, something that hadn't been there before. Peace, maybe, or at least the beginning of it. We talked for 3 hours. She told me about her therapy journey. I told her about mine. She told me about the scholarship she and her husband had created in Emma's name. I told her about my pottery and my new position at school, and we talked about Daniel, about how he had reached out to her family as part of his own healing process, about how he was trying to honor Emma's memory in healthier ways now. Diane, Patricia said toward the end of our conversation, I want to thank you for forgiving Daniel. He needed that. But more importantly, you needed it. You needed to not carry that anger anymore. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but also one of the most important. She reached across the table and took my hand. You know what Emma used to say about you? She said you were the strongest person she knew. She said she hoped that if she ever became a mother, she would be half as good at it as you were. Those words broke something open in me. I had spent so much time after Emma's death wondering if I had failed Daniel somehow, if my mothering had been inadequate in some fundamental way. But here was Emma's mother telling me that Emma had admired my parenting, had wanted to emulate it. "Thank you for telling me that," I whispered. I needed to hear it. After that meeting with Patricia, something else shifted in me. The last pieces of grief and anger and self-doubt fell away. I had been holding on to them without even realizing it, carrying them like stones in my pockets. But now they were gone, and I felt lighter than air. That night, I called Dr. Reynolds. "I know I haven't needed regular sessions in a while, but I wanted to tell you something." "What is it, Diane?" "I'm done grieving, not done remembering, not done honoring what happened, but done being defined by the loss. I'm ready to just live now." There was a long pause. Then Dr. Reynolds spoke, her voice warm with emotion. "Diane, that's the goal of all therapeutic work, to reach the point where you don't need therapy anymore because you've internalized the tools and done the healing. I'm so proud of you. Thank you. For everything. You saved my life. No, Diane, you saved your own life. I just held space for you while you did the work." As I write this final chapter of my story, I'm sitting in my pottery studio, which I converted from my spare bedroom last year. Around me are pieces in various stages of completion. A bowl that represents joy, a sculpture that represents transformation, a vase that represents the complicated beauty of forgiveness. Each piece tells a story, and together they tell my story. I'm 63 years old. I have a son who loves me, a daughter-in-law who has become a true daughter, a granddaughter who fills my days with laughter. I have friends who show up for me. I have work that matters. I have art that expresses what words cannot. But more than any of that, I have myself, whole, complete, unbreakable. Not because nothing can break me, but because I know now that even if I break, I can put myself back together. Better than before, stronger than before, more beautiful for having been broken. If you're reading this or hearing this story because you're going through your own version of loss, please know this. The pain you're feeling right now is real and valid and overwhelming. Don't let anyone minimize it or rush you through it. Grieve as long as you need to grieve, but also know that grief is not the end of your story. It's a chapter, a painful, necessary chapter, but just a chapter. There are more chapters coming, chapters where you discover strengths you never knew you had, chapters where you build a life that's authentically yours, chapters where you look back on this pain and realize it transformed you in ways you never could have predicted. You will survive this, and you will do more than survive. You will thrive, not despite the pain, but because of what the pain taught you. My name is Diane Morrison. I'm 63 years old. I lost my son that day when he chose to erase me from his life, but I got my life back. My real life, the life I was always meant to live, the life where I am enough, all by myself. And if I could go back and tell that broken woman sitting on her couch, reading Ashley's text message, staring at her blocked phone number, I would tell her this: you are about to go through hell, but you are also about to discover that you are made of fire, and nothing will ever be able to destroy you again. That's my story. That's my truth. That's my gift to anyone who needs to hear it. You are stronger than you know. You are more resilient than you can imagine. And you are never, ever alone in your pain. Keep going. Keep building. Keep surviving. Because on the other side of this darkness is a light so bright it will take your breath away. I promise you, it's worth it.